Hey folks, welcome back to My Kitten Reads, and this is my November reading wrap up for 2020. I read 20 books in November, but I'm probably not going to go into huge amounts of detail on them because they're all have gone a little blurry. But yes, I read 20 books, and that is mainly because I had a bit of a Jane Austen variation binge, and then I started the Parasol Verse project, which is currently a bit has halted a bit, but I will hopefully be making progress soon. But yes, so I read a lot of things. So I did actually start November with Solace by Gail Carriger, not for the Parasol Verse project, but as you can see by the little tabs, for my essay, which I am still waiting on a result for. But I did reread the first of the Alexia Tarabotti books, where Alexia sort of accidentally falls in love with her werewolf whilst investigating scientific issues that are causing problems for the vampires and the werewolves. It's fun, it's witty, it's got amazing and ridiculous hats. So, love it, love Solace. Then, after I finished my essay, I went on a bit of a binge of Pride and Prejudice variations. Some new authors to me, all of who were a little melodramatic, but I still had fun reading them. So I started with Miss Gardner by Martin Honeycutt, in which Elizabeth as a child becomes interested in the fact that she can invest in her uncle's business and make money, because after she's made some savings, her mother finds out about them as a child and spends them all on her sisters, on gowns and bonnets and stuff. And so Elizabeth starts investing in her Uncle Gardner's business, and then under the name Miss Gardner, when she's visiting them, she ends up agreeing to help her uncle inventory a whole bunch of stuff in Mr. Darcy's townhouse, because Mr. Darcy, who she's never met before, Aunt Catherine has sort of committed fraud and made the debt fall on Mr. Darcy's shoulders. So Mr. Darcy has to sell all this stuff that his mother used to collect and just put in storage. And so that's how they meet. Lizzie comes to inventory all this stuff. So there's that. Then I read quite a few Martin Honeycutts. So Saving Jane, in which Lydia is ruined by the militia and has an unexpected visitor, meaning that Jane ends up having to get engaged to Mr. Collins in order to save the family. Elizabeth meets Georgiana in London when she's staying with the Gardners, because Georgiana has literally just been abandoned by Mrs. Young, so it's before, it's different to Ramsgate. And so Lizzie meets Darcy, and somehow in the midst of falling in love, they need to figure out how to save Jane from having to marry Miss Collins. Then again, by Martin Honeycutt, there was Master of Netherfield, in which Darcy's father, in order to move, after his mother dies, in order to move his mistress into Pemberley, when Darcy graduates university, he gives Darcy Netherfield to run. And Darcy, disapproving of his father's actions, takes Georgiana with him, and so they actually meet the Bennets at a much younger age and grow to care about them. And when Darcy does eventually inherit Pemberley, he just can't wait to go back to Netherfield. Then also by Martin Honeycutt, Follies and Nonsense, in which Lizzie had a forced marriage. She is now widowed with a young son. She comes back to Meryton just in time for the assembly to tick Darcy off for his rude comments about the locals, and things go from there. So that was, I think, 4 Martin Honeycutt books. Then I read The Banished Uncle by Lara Kendig. Again, Pride and Prejudice variation. In this case, another Gardner sibling who has been in India for years and years and years due to romantic entanglements, comes back, and it turns out that his stepson has inherited, I think it's an earldom, but is aristocracy. But they're from India, and so things happen. And like Jane and Lizzie and Mary start to help the family get used to being back in England, and again, shenanigans. And then also by Lara Bekendig, I read a fortuitous fall, in which Mr. Collins falls over and knocks himself out at the Netherfield Ball. And when he wakes up, he's quite different because his servile persona has been literally knocked out of him. And it turns out he's a genius, but because of the treatment he suffered under his father and then under Lady Catherine, and he was punished for being smart, it got pushed down underneath. And so that changes the way everyone interacts with each other, particularly because it means that everyone has to stay at Netherfield for longer than in the actual book, because, of course, Mr. Collins is not fit to travel. Then I read A New Jan Roland, which is, again, Pride and Prejudice variation. I'm nearly at the end of them, I promise. Called Her Indomitable Resolve, in which Elizabeth is the youngest daughter. Her father dies when she and Jane are still living at Longbourn. So Collins inherits. Jane marries Bingley, and so Elizabeth trots off to London with them because she doesn't get along with her mother and she doesn't get along with Mr. Collins. I believe Mary married Mr. Collins, but things are still very uncomfortable, even though Mary does her best. So Lizzie trots off to London with Jane and Bingley, and that is how she meets Darcy. And then after that, I went on my Parasolverse binge. So I read, there's a long list. It's a whole page. The Curious Case of the Werewolf That Wasn't, which is the short story prequel, which is about Alessandro Tarabotti, which is Alexia's father, and the incident in Egypt in which he sets up later books, but also meets the woman who he will accidentally marry and have a child with, and has to escort her home because his undercover activities, his supernatural activities, have kind of meant the death of her brother. So that's that. Then there is the Finishing School series, which is 4 books, which I won't go into in detail. Etiquette and Espionage, Curtsies and Conspiracies, Waistcoats and Weaponry, and Manners and Mutiny, in which Sophronia gets sent to finishing school, but it's a slightly unusual finishing school because it finishes intelligences and assassins. So alongside curtsying and manners and dancing and conversation, they learn about poisons and weaponry and extracting information on a flying dirigible, and shenanigans of all sorts ensue. Sophronia, turns out, is very good at intelligencing. She's just a bit bold. Yes. So, that was fun, and it involves all sorts of fun characters that we see later, like young Vive, who is Madame LeFou's niece, who wants to pretend to be a boy and go to Bunsen's, the Academy for Evil Geniuses. And of course Sid Haig, who is the great-great-great-granddaughter of Lord Connell Macon from King Air, who's the head of the King Air pack. Again, names we know. So that's a great deal of fun. It turns out the 4th book, Manners and Mutiny, I didn't remember a single thing. I thought the events that happened in Waistcoat and Weaponry, the 3rd book, I thought that was the end. Like, I'd forgotten that there was stuff that came after that. But it was great fun to reread. I really, really enjoyed it. And then there were a couple of novellas, Poison and Protect, and Defy or Defend, which I believe they're referred to as the Delightfully Deadly novellas. And these follow up on some of the side characters from the Finishing School series as adult women who are starting to have romantic entanglements. So Poison or Protect is Preshaya's story. where she is known as the Morning Star because she has buried like 4 husbands. And so she gets hired to go and subtly separate a duke's daughter from her paramour who the duke doesn't approve of, but at the same time she's guarding the duke because there are people that are trying to kill him. And she meets a large Scottish soldier who doesn't treat her as she expects men to treat her. It's very interesting. These are romantic novellas, so there's some quite saucy bits. But in this particular case, because of the way Priscilla, because of the behaviour of her father and some of the men that she has married, she expects pain and roughness in the bedroom. And she is quite bewildered by this man that wants to treat her gently and be given orders. Let's just say that. Despite the fact that he's this huge brute of a Scotsman. It's quite sweet. It really is quite sweet. And then the Defy or Defend was a new one to me. It's I think it's the most recent Parasol Verse book. And it's Dimity's story. So Dimity has been working as an intelligentsia for the War Office, just smoothing over problems. But when she does this, she needs to have a guard. And so she is once again paired with a guy who is very irritated by her, and they have to go and deal with a vampire hive which has gone gothic. And that's not good, because that means the queen is hidden away in a cellar, in a cave, and won't see anybody. The drones who look after the hive have gone, and everything's getting very dramatic and melodramatic and gothic. And the other vampires are starting to lose the plot. And so Dimity is given 2 weeks to either sort it out and get them back away from the gothic, or call in a sundowner and have them all executed. Because when a vampire hive goes gothic, things start to get messy. And it's sweet, and it's hilarious, and I love it. Then there was a short story called Meet Cute, which was also new to me. And that is the hedgehog incident. So we learn in the first of the Alexia novels, in Solace, that there was an incident with a hedgehog, which was when Alexia actually met Colin McCon. And it's a bit of a, they blame each other for it. But this is the hedgehog incident, which, as it turns out, was manipulated into being by certain very familiar faces. I won't quite spoil it, but it's quite a cute short story. After that, I returned to the Alexa Terabody series, Parasol Protectorate. So I'd already read Solace. So after Solace came Changeless, Blameless, Heartless, and Timeless. And yes, I did actually read Blameless. So the problem I've had in the past with Blameless, the first time I read it, is while it's a very good book and I rated it 5 stars, it's very difficult to read, particularly at the start, because of the way people are treating Alexia. So, spoilers, if you haven't read them, but at the end of the second novel, which is Changeless, Alexia discovers she's pregnant. The problem is she's married to a werewolf, and werewolves are technically dead. So it shouldn't actually be possible. And this is Victorian society. So she is quietly sacked from her political position because Queen Victoria does not approve. She has moved back in with her parents. Her husband has abandoned her. And the vampires are trying to kill her with mechanical ladybugs. What's a girl to do? Go to the continental Europe, tramp through, flee the vampires through France, get to Italy, and get mixed up with the Templars in an attempt to find out how the infant inconvenience is actually possible. Once you actually get through the first really, really awkward few chapters, it's actually a really fun romp. I'd forgotten how fun that romp is once you get through those first few chapters where all the social stuff is very, very awkward. So basically, Flute and her butler and secretary, Alexia and Madame Le Fou, her inventor friend, romp through Europe, meeting various people, fleeing vampires, and getting mixed up with Templars. So that was actually more fun than I thought it was going to be. And of course, Heartless and Timeless I have reread a couple of times. So yes, that was the list of things that I read in November. It was a very fun, frivolous reading month, which I suppose is appropriate after having finished university for the year. So yeah, I am way ahead on my Goodreads count. Like, I think I've read like 137 and my goal was 120. So that I'm kind of sorted with. I am going to try and continue the Parasolverse project this month in December. I will probably also try and pick a few other things. I'll have a check of where I am with my other goals, and try and pick a few things to meet those as well. I am going on leave on the 16th of December. So I am also going to visit family. So there will definitely be one more video coming in that I have an Owlcrate unboxing to film. I do know how to set videos to premiere at a future date, so I will have a bit of a think about what I might film, and do that for, so that you can still have some content through December, because I probably can't actually upload very well from my parents' house. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of the massive list of things I just talked about. And I should probably stop because I think my voice is going. So I shall see you all again really soon. Bye!